Welcome. In a previous video I set up Wikipedia on a Raspberry Pi using Kiwix, and the way I set that up is you plug your Raspberry Pi in to power and you hook it up to an Ethernet network and you can access that on your network. So in this video I'm actually going to continue from where I left off in that video, but I'm going to merge that video in with this video, so I'll go through the setup and everything. And then we'll take the Raspberry Pi and we'll set it up for Wi-Fi to be a Wi-Fi access point. And to give an example, it'll be such that you could take this Raspberry Pi, you could go to a cabin in the middle of woods, in the middle of anywhere, you could power this, and then you can connect to it from any device and access Wikipedia. So the hardware I'm using is a Raspberry Pi 4, but this should work with other Raspberry Pis. I'll put a link in the description to the hardware I'm using that I got from Amazon, and if you use that link, it helps me out a little bit and doesn't cost you anything extra. I'll also put a link to my Raspberry Pi playlist where you can find my other Raspberry Pi videos. So I'm going to have some documentation on my website. I'll put a link in the description of that too, and I'll be walking through that as I'm working on this. So the first thing you need to do is download the Raspberry Pi image. So if you go to raspberrypi.org, click Downloads, and I'm using this Raspberry Pi Imager software. I did make a video of that, that's on my playlist. I want to go to Raspbian, and then I'm using Raspbian Buster Lite. So you want to download that. I've already downloaded it. So I want to write that to an SD card, so I'm going to open up my Imager software. I'm going to choose my OS. I'm going to scroll down and click Use Custom. I'll go to my Downloads folder and I'll choose my image. And you can see it's zipped up. I haven't unzipped this. It can handle that zipped up, so there's no reason to break it apart. I'll put my SD card in the slot. For SD card, I'll say Choose SD card. I'm going to choose this 32 gigabyte card and I'll click Write. So now this will write the image. I'm going to speed the video up now. It's asking for my password. I'll do that. Okay, so the image has been written. I'll click Continue. I'll close the imager and I can remove the SD card. So now I'm going to switch over to my Raspberry Pi for a portion of this, and then I'm going to switch back to my Mac and we'll remote into the Raspberry Pi. Okay, it's loaded. So I'm going to log in here. The username is Pi and the password is Raspberry. Next, you don't need to do this, but I'm going to make my font bigger. Okay, I just made that bigger so it's easier for you to read. So what I want to do is I want to enable SSH and find out the IP address of this. So to enable SSH, I want to type sudo raspi-config. I'll hit enter. I'll scroll down to interface options. I'll scroll down to SSH. I'll say yes. And now it's enabling SSH. I'll hit OK. I'll go to finish. I'll clear my screen. And now I'm going to find the IP address. You want to type IP space A. And I do have this plugged into Ethernet. And the IP address is 192.168.7.206. So you could set this up on wireless LAN also. You could do that through Raspi-config. But now I'm done with the Raspberry Pi right now. I'm going to switch back to the Mac because it's easier to do my screen recording there and I can copy and paste into the terminal. You could actually type everything I'm saying into the console if you wanted to. I think copy and pasting is a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm back on the Mac now. I'm going to go to my terminal. I'll make that bigger. So I want to log into the Raspberry Pi. So I want to type SSH space pi at and then the IP address, and I'll hit enter. It'll ask if I want to continue connecting. I'll say yes, and then I'll type Raspberry. So if you're on Windows, you can use either PuTTY or you can use the built-in Windows 10 SSH client. But otherwise it's the same. And the other procedure I did earlier was the same on Windows 2. You can download the Raspberry Pi Imager and use it pretty much the same. Okay, so the first command I'm going to run is sudo apt update and then ampersand sudo apt upgrade. What that will do is it will run apt update. That'll update the package list. And then the ampersand says if sudo apt update ran, then run sudo apt upgrade. So if anything fails on the update, it won't run the upgrade afterwards. So this is just updating the system so we have all the latest software on here. And I'm also using Buster. If you're watching this like 5 years from now, you can try a newer version of Raspbian, but if it doesn't work, you might want to fall back to Buster. I'll say I want to continue, yes. Okay, so that completed. I'll clear my screen. Next I want to type sudo space raspi-config. I'll hit enter. So I have some things here I want to change. These are localization options. So I want to change the locale. So I'll go down here to localization options. I want to change locale. And I'm going to scroll down. Since I made my font big, it's kind of hard to see. I want to go to EN. So it's going to be a ways down. And you see EN_GB for Great Britain. That's highlighted, but I want US. And I want this one here, en_us.utf-8. I want to hit spacebar there to mark it. I'll hit tab to go to OK. I'm going to push down to the one I chose. I'll hit OK again. Okay, so we're going to go through all the options on the localization page. So I'm going to go to change time zone. I don't know how important this is because it's not going to be saving any information, but I'm going to do it anyway. I chose America. I hit C. Let's see, I should find Chicago here. I'll hit OK. Go back to localization options, keyboard layout. For this one, I'll hit OK. I'll go down to other. OK. I'll go up. No. Let's see, I want to go down to English US. I'll hit OK. Now I want to go up all the way to English US. OK. I'm going to choose OK here. OK here, and that's done. One last time, I'll go down here to change Wi-Fi country. I'll hit select. I'll hit U. I'll go down to US and I'll hit OK. Okay. Now I'll go to finish and I'll exit out of there. I can clear my screen. So now we want to go to the Kiwix downloads Kiwix serve. So I have that site up already. Let's see, I'll expand this a little bit. There we go. So I want to go to downloads server. I'll scroll down here to where you see GNU Linux ARM 32-bit. I'll right click on that and say copy link. Okay, we'll go back to the instructions here. It says wget paste in URL. So I'll go to my site, I'll type wget, and then I will paste in my URL and I'll hit enter, and that will download it directly to the server. I'll clear my screen. You don't have to clear your screen every time, I just do it to make it easier to see. So next we want to type tar space -zxvf. So this is going to uncompress the file. So Z means compression, X means extract, V means verbose or display information, and F means file. I'll hit space, then I'll type KI tab, and that will fill in the rest of the compressed file we have there. I'll hit enter. Okay, and now I want to move this to USR local bin. So I have this here, I'll probably put this on my website, but you need to pay attention to the version numbers. If it changes, you might have to use a different version number. So I'll type sudo space mv space, and then I'll hit ki tab, and then dash tab again, and you see the numbers are there. And then I want to have star space /USR /local /bin / just like so. I'll hit enter. So now if I type ki tab, you'll see these come up as commands like the Kiwix serve. Okay, so I'll clear my screen here. Next it says download Zim from this site. So if we go to downloads here, we go to content. We scroll down on the page a little bit, you'll see it has the Kiwix wiki. I'll click that. And this has many wikis on it for all sorts of languages. They're medical specific ones, you name it. The one I like to use is the simple one. So I just search the page for simple. So I have Wikipedia English, and I use this simple all no pick. So it's about 443 megabytes. But someday I may download the big one. I think there's one that's about 80 some gigabytes. And you can put that on a 128 gigabyte SD card and have, this huge wealth of information on something the size of your thumbnail. I think that's pretty amazing. So you would go over here and hit download. I've already done that, so it's in my downloads folder. So I have that here. So there are a couple different ways to copy that over. I'll just open up another terminal. I'll go CD to my downloads folder. I'll type SCP. I'll make this bigger. And I'll type Wikipedia. I'll type the thing and I'll just hit WI tab, did that. And then I'll type pi at, and then I'll type my IP address. And then I'll type colon, and then I'll type tilde /. I'll hit enter. It's going to ask me for my password, so I'll type Raspberry. And now this will copy it over. So a zim file is like a compacted unit that contains all of the text and or images of the Wikipedia information. It's the whole data set, and it's compressed incredibly well. It uses the XZ compression algorithm, or compression type program. It's LZMA, I think is what it's called. Okay, so that copied over pretty quick. So that'll probably take a little while to download. So if you're watching this video first, you may want to start downloading that so you have it available later. So we'll go back to our server. I'll type ls, and we see the Wikipedia file there. Go back to my documentation. I talk about copying it to the server, and I think this is in the wrong spot. I'm going to edit this before I post it, but it says copy to var local, so I'll type sudo space mv Wikipedia, and then I want /var /local /. I'll hit enter. So you can copy or move this. It doesn't really matter. When I first started my documentation, I was copying it, now I'm moving it. It does pretty much the same thing. So next we want to create the Kiwix server. So I'll copy this line in. And this takes us into Nano. So we'll copy this in. So this is cutting part of it off, but you can see it on my webpage. But you may need to change this. If you don't put this in USR local bin, you need to change these paths here. And you also might need to change the name of this if you use a different Wikipedia zim package. So I'll hit Control-O to save, Control-X to exit, and now I'll enable it. So I'll type this in. It's sudo systemctl enable Kiwix. I'll hit enter. Next I'll copy this next line in. This is sudo systemctl start Kiwix, and now the system is up. So we should be able to go to a web browser now and go to that IP address. And here we have it. We have the Wikipedia Simple English. So if I click on this, it's hosted on the Raspberry Pi, so it's super fast. Okay, so we're at the point where this works over Ethernet. So now what I want to do is set this up to have DHCP and make it a Wi-Fi access point. So I'm logged into my terminal on the Raspberry Pi, and I'll put notes on my website for this also. So I'm going to copy the first line as sudo nano etc dhcp cd.conf. And I'm going to go to the bottom of this. In my terminal on the Mac, I can scroll right to the bottom. I don't know if other terminals will do that. I'm going to paste in this line, and it says interface WLAN 0 static IP address equals 192.168.1.1/24 and no hook WPA supplicant. So this will set up a static IP on the wireless LAN 0. If you have a wireless card in here instead of the built-in wireless, you may have a different number, and you'll have to adjust that. So I'll type Control-O to save, Control-X to exit, clear my screen. Then I'll do sudo systemctl daemon reload, and I'll do the same thing with restart DHCP CD. I'll clear my screen. Now I want to install DNS mask. So it's DNS MASQ. So I'll install that. Clear my screen. Now I'm going to make a backup of the original configuration before I change it. And then I'm going to do sudo nano DNS masq.conf. I'm going to paste these lines in here. The first line says interface WLAN 0. It says DHCP range is 192.168.1.2 to 192.168.1.254. The net mask is 255.255.255.0, and then I have comma 24 hours. This next line says address equals / /, and then 192.168.1.1. So what this does is this redirects all DNS traffic to 192.168.1.1. So when a client connects to this box, whatever DNS they put in their web browser will connect. But there's a caveat there. It doesn't work with HTTPS. This only works with HTTP. And some browsers and sites might already be connected up with HTTPS to, say, google.com, so that could be confusing. So you would want to, say maybe do http://Kiwix or something along those lines. So I'll Control-O to save, Control-X to exit. Next I'm installing host APD, and that sets up an access point. So it's sudo apt install host apd. So I'll link in the notes to these URLs that have more information on setting up host apd. I have some configurations here, but you may want to tweak it for different frequencies and channels and things like that. I have two options here. I have Wi-Fi password and no password. So if you need a password on it, you'll want to use the first option, otherwise use the second option. If you're having trouble with this, start with something easy and then add in configurations to make it more complicated, like if you're having trouble with it. So I'll do no password. I want to type sudo space nano space /etc /host apd /host apd.conf. And that doesn't exist, so it's a blank file. I'll paste in the config here. I have interface is WLAN 0, driver is NL80211, SSID is Kiwix, HW mode is G, channel is 6. Control O to save, Control X to exit. Next I'll say sudo nano /etc /default /host apd. I'm going to paste this line in here. So I'll scroll down to this daemon conf. It's commented out. I'll hit Control K to remove the whole line, and I'll paste this line in. And this says daemon conf equals /etc /host apd /host apd conf. And then another quote. So Control O to save, Control X to exit. Then I'll run these commands here. I have sudo systemctl daemon reload. Next I have sudo systemctl umask host apd. And then I have sudo systemctl enable host apd and DNS mask. I'm enabling both at the same time. And then sudo ctl start host apd DNS mask. So now I'm going to reboot the Raspberry Pi. So I want to type sudo reboot. I'll hit enter. Okay, the Raspberry Pi is rebooted. So now I should be able to connect up to the Wi-Fi access point. So now I have Kiwix selected. In my terminal I can type ping, and I can just type anything here. So we know the DNS is resolving to 1.1 for anything. I'll open up a web browser now. So this can be a little tricky here. Web browsers tend to like HTTPS these days. So whatever address you put in, you want to have just HTTP. And you could put Kiwix, I put my encyclopedia, it doesn't really matter. If I hit that, it will open up. So now we have access to Wikipedia. So the only thing in play here is the Raspberry Pi and my laptop, because I'm on an access point hosted by the Raspberry Pi. So this could work in a classroom, it could work at a campground, it could work at, in a cabin in the woods, you could put it anywhere. So now I have this small device the size of maybe 2 decks of cards that has a tremendous wealth of information on it, and it can be accessed by anyone with a computer, tablet, whatever that supports Wi-Fi. I haven't tried it, but I imagine this would also work with a Raspberry Pi Zero W. That's a really cheap, small Raspberry Pi with a Wi-Fi access in it. So the final thing I want to do here is I'll log into the Raspberry Pi, I'll type SSH pi at, and now I'll type the local IP address, 192.168.1.1. Well, there's actually two things. So you could remove SSH from this once you're done configuring it, and you really should change the password. I didn't mention that, I probably should. If you set this up somewhere, you don't want people logging in with the default username and password over SSH. But the final thing you'd probably want to do is enable overlay FS. So you want to type sudo space raspi-config. So we want to go down here to overlay FS. It says, would you like the overlay file system to be enabled? You would choose yes here. I'm going to choose no, but you would choose yes. And it says, it'll say it is enabled if you hit yes. And it says, would you like the boot partition to be write protected? You can say yes or no there. And then when you do that, it'll ask to reboot your system. So you'll reboot, and then the system will be read-only. If you log in while overlay FS is on, you can use it as normal. You can save files and everything. But once you reboot, it will wipe out any changes you made. But this protects the system, so if you unplug it to drop power from it, it won't corrupt the SD card. So that's a really good system. Say if you did have this in a cabin out in the middle of nowhere with solar, if the solar goes out or power goes out, this thing can cycle on and off, and it's not going to corrupt your data there. So in theory, I think you could probably put something like this in a public park on a pole with a solar panel and a battery and a Raspberry Pi, and you could just have Wikipedia available to anyone walking by. So that's all I'm going to cover in this video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you like this video, please click like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate it if you could do that. And thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.